Why is alignment so important to Dungeons & Dragons, and why is the game worse off without it? Coming up right here on RPG Retro Reviews. Hello everyone. On this channel I normally review old school modules and games and discuss trivia and module modifications you might employ and so on. This video is a bit different as I intend to address a topic I've been wanting to do for years. Recently it just seems that every thread or discussion in Facebook groups or Reddit are complaints about alignment or arguments as to why it should be taken out of the game and so on. It's become rather pervasive. The goal then of this video is to provide a tool that clarifies specifically why alignment is fun and exciting and a big part of Dungeons & Dragons and should remain so. It's not my intention to tell anyone how to have fun, but it is my intention to show how alignment can be a lot of fun. And so please, before you go crazy in those comments, keep that in mind, and please keep an open mind while I go ahead and present my case for alignment and its importance to Dungeons & Dragons. As a dungeon master for most of the 38 years of playing this game, alignment has been a big part of my campaigns, even though perhaps the players were not really aware of it, unless there was some spell, magic item, or effect that relied on it. Otherwise, it was pretty much in the background. Also, let's address the fact that in the early days of Dungeons & Dragons, alignment was sometimes used like a sledgehammer by some overzealous DMs to rebuke players who had committed some game transgression. It was a source of tension and argument, and much of this can be blamed and rests squarely on the shoulders of Gary Gygax and his words in the original Dungeon Master's Guide. On page 25 of the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, Gary goes into some detail on the penalties for changing alignment, and it's this that sticks in the craw of many players, that if they roleplay their character a certain way, there might be penalties for doing so. In first edition D&D, this could mean loss of experience points and levels, a sacrifice of treasure, character ability, and so on. In this way, players might come to believe that shackles had been placed on their roleplay. In reality, the penalty was probably put in place to force players to really think about their character's ethos and moral stance before the game begins, rather than just tack on an alignment willy-nilly and proceed from there. I, for one, won't disagree that this is the wrong approach to alignment, but it has been 40 years since Gary wrote these words. The game has evolved significantly in that time, so it certainly is fine to move away from such heavy-handed tactics, though I'm certain the 5th edition stance on alignment, which is to make it virtually inconsequential to the game, is not the correct way to go either. Several reasons, which I'll address in a moment. What I will say is that alignment is one of those distinguishing characteristics that makes D&D unique and defined as a system. When you think of alignment, you automatically think of Dungeons & Dragons, but there's a lot more to it than that. However, let's talk about the arguments against alignment first, and there are a bunch of them, so I'm going to list the most popular ones I've encountered, many of those on Reddit and Facebook and in face-to-face arguments over the decades, and then I'm going to demonstrate why they are all wrong. Ready? Let's go. It's not realistic. People don't have alignment in real life. I can't roleplay my character the way I want to, or it's too restrictive. Or my personal favorite, I'm going to play chaotic neutral so I can do whatever I want. Here's one that I saw on Reddit that really made me chuckle. It's an inappropriate and unnecessary attachment of Judeo-Christian morality to an Iron Age pagan world. It's narratively dull and limiting. Here's another one that crops up frequently. Good and evil are two sides of the same coin. What one society thinks is good might be evil for another society, which makes the alignment system stupid. I think that covers the most salient points, but I'm sure there are many other variations on the above. So let's talk about realism for a moment. We are talking about a game where magic really works and where dragons fly and so on. Realism from the game is kind of silly to begin with, but I get what is being suggested here, but the perception is simply wrong. I've seen this discussed before, and a common answer to this is there are actually two alignments for each character. The first alignment is who your character aspires to be, and the second is what the character shows the world. To some extent, philosophically speaking, we are all two people, and the face we show society might be quite different than who we really are, but I don't think that you need to take an extra step and list it like that on your character sheet. I like to frame it like this to my players. The alignment on the sheet is your ideal, who you would like to be or who you secretly are. When playing your character, you keep this in mind. For example, if you allow the torture of a prisoner and you're lawful good, does that mean you're actually evil? Now that is unrealistic. Everyone makes mistakes, falters in their ideas, falls to pragmatism, and does things they regret. And here's your roleplay opportunity, not your limiter. How does the character feel about what just happened? Even if it's an evil goblin, do they feel bad? Do they try to make amends? Maybe. Later that night, while the party is asleep, the character gets up and lets the goblin go because of their guilt over what happened. That's a story opportunity right there. How does the party feel about what the character did? What are the repercussions? Does the goblin just run to his comrades and rallying them back to attack the party? There are many things that could happen here, and those options were made available because of alignment. Morally ambiguous stories are some of the most enriching kinds of stories you can tell, and the alignment system provides a framework for intense and dramatic roleplays. It's a starting point, a wellspring for our ideas, where those kinds of stories can be told. How is this dull? How is this limiting? How is this unrealistic? It's not. Now, let's talk about good and evil for a moment. I'm going to get into a bit of philosophy here, but not overly so. What I want to talk about are the traits of good and the traits of evil. If you understand the specifics of these things, you come to realize the absolute silliness of the argument that perspective determines what is good and what is evil. If you're making this argument, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but it's you who are confused about morality, not the game's alignment system. A few of the traits of good are, but not limited to, benevolence, a sense of justice, sharing, empathy, integrity, tolerance, and honesty. These traits allow a society to flourish and grow. Societies form for protection and the benefit of all. The above traits assure the continuance of that society and are key to maintaining the order of law. I'm sure you can think of others, and this is a great opportunity to list them in the comments. A few of the traits of evil are, but not limited to, selfishness, deception, sadism, a lack of remorse or empathy, corruption, maliciousness, narcissism, hatefulness, and hostility. Traits such as these hasten the breakdown of civility in society and are the path to chaos and anarchy. I hope you see what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to assign specific traits to the alignment themes, and there will be a lot less arguing over what is good and what is evil when you do this. So while you may have some societies that think or believe that sadism is good, it isn't actually good. Their belief that it is a self-deception, a lie they tell themselves to justify their evil. It's a very common trait among evil creatures in Dungeons & Dragons, and in real life for that matter. For example, you will frequently see the justification of evil action with the statement, "It's the law," which fails to recognize that law without the temperance of mercy is tyranny. Last, let's talk about the chaotic neutral silliness. Anyone can do whatever they want at any time regardless of alignment. It's also true that regardless of alignment, you can't do whatever you want without penalty. If you burn down the town, there should be in-game consequences. The established state authority is going to organize its massive access to resources and hunt the offenders down without mercy. And really, isn't that what the player is saying? They want to be able to do whatever they want? They assume consequences for doing certain things if they are of a particular alignment, say lawful good, for example. But in fact, there are consequences for doing certain things regardless of alignment. Fugitives from Authority could be a fun campaign, at least up until the point where the characters get caught. And then things are going to get hairy. Or perhaps you just want to play a game where you go crazy and kill innocent people without rhyme or reason or penalties. If that's your thing, it's your game. Don't let me tell you what your fun is. But over the long haul, such affairs tend to disband after a time for a variety of reasons. Many of them the same reasons a chaotic society breaks down over time. And certainly how much wanton, senseless destruction can you play before it becomes passé? Regardless, chaotic neutral isn't really the freedom alignment. It's the stance of a jerk. And some people like to play jerks. Some people are actually jerks and can't play anything else but a jerk. But that's a topic for another video. Matt Colville gave a great example on his alignment video, which I'll put a link to in the description. As Matt likes to say, basically the player put on his character sheet that his character was evil, but never did anything evil. Even when the opportunity presented itself, the players and Matt, the DM, gave the player plenty of opportunities to do something evil, which the player never did. Finally, everyone just said, hey, if you're not going to do evil things, then you're not evil. Change your alignment. Simple. Anyway, what I've been talking about so far are all examples of the character aspect of alignment, or what I like to refer to as the micro scale of alignment. This is the personal day-to-day level, which in play really doesn't matter 96% of the time. The players don't worry about it too much, and the DM doesn't worry about it too much either, unless some type of moral crisis is introduced into the story. In just about every argument you'll ever see online or between players for or against alignment, it is a discussion on the micro scale, which is why those arguments become invalid when you address this other, rarely addressed aspect of alignment. However, from the standpoint of a long-term ongoing campaign, it is the most important. I refer to this as the macro scale of alignment, and interestingly enough, Gary Gygax touches ever so gently on this on page 25 in the very first paragraph, very first sentence on the infamous Changing Alignments article I referenced earlier. He writes, whether or not the character actively professes some deity, he or she will have an alignment and serve one or more deities of this general alignment indirectly and unbeknownst to the character. What? What the heck is Gary talking about here? How can you serve a deity and not know it? What he's talking about is the macro scale of alignment. Here, alignment is not just a moral stance of the character. It is a cosmic force of creation and the cosmos. It is, in fact, the driving force behind everything that happens in the campaign. If you go back to the D&D Great Wheel cosmology, the planes of existence are divided into realms populated by creatures and gods of a particular alignment. Demons are chaotic evil and come from the abyss. Devils are lawful evil and come from the 9 hells. The lower planes of existence, archons, are lawful good or chaotic good, and so on, and come from the outer planes. For these creatures, alignment is not a moral stance, for they themselves and the planes they live on are the physical manifestation of alignment. They are alignment given form, shape, and power, and this power comes from the forces of creation itself. This aspect of alignment is the key to understanding its importance in Dungeons & Dragons. Remove it, and the very foundation of everything D&D is built on begins to crumble. Does that sound like an extreme view? Let me give you a prime example, and I'm sure many of you have seen this topic in just about every D&D forum ever. The party comes across a room full of orc females and babies. Should the party slaughter them because they are evil? If you've removed alignment from the game, does it really matter? Are they really evil? The ambiguity creeps into the narrative in a disruptive way. Is it morally right to slaughter the innocents knowing that these orc babies will grow up to do evil things? In fact, is it not racist to assume that just because they are orcs, they will do evil? It's the classic nurture versus nature argument. Should the lawful good paladin slaughter the orcs to keep them from doing evil things in the future? Wouldn't that be a good act? Let's address the first problem here. Are all orcs inherently evil? If you've removed alignment from the game, you really have a problem here because you've essentially removed the core foundation of D&D and all of fantasy literature for that matter. Fantasy literature assumes that good and evil are clearly defined. It's true for Tolkien, it's true for George Lucas with his light and dark sides of the Force, and fantasy literature in general. This is especially troubling in Dungeons & Dragons because so much of the game is predicated on this assumption. In 5th edition, this anomaly is magnified because the game has attempted to remove alignment as a game mechanic completely. For example, the spell protection for good and evil reads as follows. One willing creature you touch is protected against aberrations, celestials, elementals, fae, fiends, and undead. Creatures of those types have disadvantages on attack rolls against the target. The target also can't be charmed, frightened, or possessed by them. If the target already has such an effect by one of them, the target has advantage on any new saving throw against it. Why these creature types? Because they embody the aspects of alignment, good or evil. They have no choice in what they are. It's their nature. They can no more defy their nature than the scorpion can defy stinging the frog as they cross the river, even though it means the death of both of them. However, the spell wouldn't work against evil orcs, right? Or other evil creatures, elves or humans or what have you. Why is that? The answer is because mortals have free will. However, immortals, the gods, make their presence known in the prime material plane with their creations. And orcs were created by Grumsh, an evil deity. Well, they were corrupted. They are his contribution to corruption and entropy to the world. They are an extension of his will made physical. Can an individual orc defy this convention? Certainly, but that is the rare exception, not the rule. So back to the original question, is it moral to slaughter helpless orc babies? The answer is it doesn't matter if the DM hasn't considered the ecology of his setting. Now you might argue that you want to play a hack and slay campaign and not worry about such things, and certainly if everyone is having fun, that's your prerogative until someone asks the question, and then it matters. So as DM, you have to ask a different question. Where did these orcs fit into the ecology of the setting? Certainly they do not exist in a vacuum. They forage, they hunt, they make war, they have a place in the ecological workings of the area. What is the effect of removing them? For the answer, let's look at a real-life example. The hunting of wolves in the United States brings them to near extinction and had unintended consequences in other areas. While calling the pack seemed like a reasonable response to something that posed a threat to livestock and people, something that threatened the very survival of the early settlers, removing the wolves completely resulted in a population explosion of those species that had been the wolves' prey. Deer became a threat to crops and carried Lyme disease and other parasites that threatened people's health. It eventually became apparent that removing the wolves from the ecology would have devastating ecological consequences, and laws were passed to protect the wolves and then return them to the ecosystem. So, where do your orcs fit into your setting's ecology? Let's suggest that the Howling Orc tribe has been at war with the Laughing Knoll tribe for generations. This cycle of war and renewal has for the most part kept the two tribes from attaining dominance in the area, and for that reason the human population in the area has been able to thrive relatively unmolested. Though occasional forays into human lands by both species has led to tragedies in the past, the smaller numbers due to the Orc-Knoll conflict has allowed the humans to address the problem and rein in the offenders and give them time to build up their defenses. So completely eliminating the orc tribe by killing their babies could have potentially disastrous consequences in the long run for the nearby human settlements. Certainly the leaders in the area are aware of this delicate balance, and despite calls to the contrary over the decades the surrounding towns have worked to maintain it. So now, with this in mind, the DM has several avenues of conflict and adventure depending on the actions the characters take. If they slaughter the orc babies, certainly they will be tasked with going after the gnolls. Otherwise, the gnolls, if left unchecked, will become a major threat to the area. Or they could just move on, in which case they might be fined or even pursued by the authorities for upsetting this balance. In my campaigns, I take a lot of my cue on alignment from the old D&D master set of rules, which, in my opinion, used alignment the best and defined its importance better than any D&D publication before or since. Here, the players could choose a path to immortality and take their place as one of the immortals, the basic D&D equivalent of gods and deities. Those paths were specifically defined and based on one of 5 spheres of influence: energy, thought, matter, time, and entropy. I touched on this a few years ago in my review of the D&D Rules Cyclopedia, and I would encourage you to take a look at that video, but the gist of it is that these cosmic forces shape the universe. Entropy is destruction, chaos, and evil, a desire to destroy all living things. All things devolve into chaos, and entropy seeks the end of life. Energy is the force of creation, the progenitor of life, order, and law. This creation force seeks to expand and manifest the cosmos in infinite forms. Time, matter, and thought think to balance the two. Time keeps energy in check with the slow decay into entropy. Matter keeps entropy in check with the creation of the physical, and thought provides an orderly means to give things shape and form. So, good, evil, and neutrality, law, and chaos all come from these cosmic forces of creation. In that creation, many diametrically opposed planes of existence were given shape and form, and of course these powerful forces are fighting a never-ending war for supremacy. Now, occasionally these forces spill over to the prime material plane and the campaign world. The evidence of these many wars are scattered about the landscape in the form of lost civilizations, ruins, powerful artifacts and magic items, the rise of foul despots, and the fall of benevolent kings. One of the things that I hold to in my campaigns is that corruption cannot create anything new. It is the outcropping of entropy after all. However, it can corrupt something that already exists. For example, in the lore of Tolkien, the orcs were corrupted elves that had undergone horrific transformation at the vile hands of the first Lord Morgoth. So while the orcs were the manifestation of corruption on Middle-earth, there is a tragedy to their history. In the world of Exandria, the world created by Matt Mercer of Critical Role fame, the humanoid races suffer from the curse of strife. In Exandria, Goblinkin evolved from another humanoid race called the Draenasar. The Strife Emperor, Bane, corrupted this race for his bidding. Even after the placement of the divine gate that prevents the gods from physically entering the world, Bane can still influence events through the subconscious whisperings in the minds of the Goblinkin, spurring them to commit acts of evil. Breaking this curse is not easy, but there are several methods to do so. Even if the curse is broken, some individuals will still adhere to their evil alignment, so it's not a guarantee. Regardless, from a storytelling and narrative perspective, that adds in a dramatic element, and this sort of conflict is frequently key to great storytelling. When characters are low level, their alignment really doesn't matter all that much. They are meager beings just trying to survive in a hostile world. But to the DM, it matters greatly, but in a behind-the-scenes sort of way. The DM may not even consciously consider it, but as things progress, characters get higher and higher in level. The things the heroes begin to encounter become more and more powerful. Demons, devils, perhaps even the gods themselves. As they leave their world, their plane of existence, and confront the very powers of creation, their alignment matters more and more. Past deeds come back to haunt them. The repercussions for their past transgressions manifest in horrible and dramatic ways, and the heroes come to find out that during the entire campaign to this point, they were being manipulated by one cosmic power or the other, like pawns on a chessboard, in a never-ending struggle between entropy and creation. To me, this is the very antithesis of boring, limiting, inappropriate, or narratively dull. Now, I'd like to impart a bit of advice for DMs and players on this topic. DMs, Don't use alignment as a hammer to beat your characters back into line. Quietly note players' actions, either for or against their ethos, and let it progress organically. In extreme cases, perhaps take the player aside and suggest an alignment change that is more in keeping with their actions. Or get a perspective on why the character is doing what they're doing and find a way to work this into the ongoing story. It's a role-playing opportunity, not a role-playing limiter. Players don't think about alignment as shackles. It's a guideline to your character's inner thought. Certainly, as you play a character, you may find that you like playing a certain way and what you initially thought about your character has changed. Take the eraser part of the pencil, make the change, discuss it with your DM, and move on. It's a guideline, and remember that there are cosmic forces in play that may or may not be guiding your actions and your fate. The gods can be fickle beings, and your character is part of a larger and grander tapestry than you are aware. Perhaps, one day in the future, the character might actually have a direct influence on some part of this cosmic tale of adventure. Lastly, let me suggest that the 9 alignment dichotomy is not the only mechanic you can use, and an alternative might be more to your liking. In the very brilliant Adventures in Middle-earth, the game simply measures the character's descent into corruption. In the Star Wars role-playing game, characters can accumulate dark side points, and if enough were accumulated, they fall to the dark side. This measure of a character's fall from the light is integral to the fantasy genre in general, and it is there to assist in the narrative, not to shackle it. The term throw the baby out with the bathwater seems appropriate here for those that want to do away with alignment altogether, and I would submit that a rich, vibrant campaign will embody the heroic themes of the fantasy genre, and alignment is an integral part of it. Well, that about wraps up this video on why alignment in D&D is important. But now it's your turn to voice your thoughts in the comments. Have you abandoned alignment completely, or perhaps you prefer it? What do you like or hate about alignment? Let's have a fun discussion on this topic. And please, guys and gals, keep it civil. I hope that perhaps I've given you a new perspective on the topic or new things to consider. Thank you all so much for watching. I've still got a lot of great videos coming up on old school modules, games, and OSR products, but as I'm sure you've noticed, my video production has slowed considerable. That's because my DJ business looks like this, which is great, but it plays havoc on research and development of OSR material. That said, I'm going to be doing more opinion pieces in addition to reviews, things like my popular sandbox campaign video and videos like this here, which require a little homework reading on my part, and hopefully that will help get things going again. In the meantime, I'd like to thank all my patrons who continue to support the channel month after month. Without you, these videos would not be possible. Please give this video a like, comment, and share. Please check out my Teespring store for great gaming swag, t-shirts, carry bags, coffee cups, and more. Join the channel's Facebook page, RPG Reviews. Consider supporting the channel by becoming a patron yourself. Alternatively, you can just send a tip through the PayPal tip jar. Link is in the description. And as always, my friends, may your D20 roll true and game on.